Uh, We have no media here. First item is the agenda. I'd like approval of the agenda.
I move.
Jenny, thank you. Without objection, Carl, thank you. Next item is the meeting report for June 27th. I'd like approval on that. Jenny, anyone else? Thank you, Carl. That is approved as submitted. Chair's remarks, I really don't have any. However, I thought about this morning, this will be my last meeting of M&C as a chair. Our next meeting in August, you'll have a new United Board at that time. So it'll be a new chairman, whoever that will be.
Not in August. October.
The October meeting will be next.
Yeah.
Oh, October.
You gotta hang in here a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, our meeting in October, though, is after the sitting of the new directors.
Right, but you said August.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay, thank you for that. So anyway, I have enjoyed being your chair. I'd like to thank Del Ing and Jack as our advisors. Always important to have qualified advisors. And of course, you members of the committee. And of course, staff, Ernesto and Lori. Always nice to have you here. Excellent people. Okay, the first item next up there is the department head update. Ernesto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick update. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for your leadership. It's been great working with you and being able to serve the committee through, again, your leadership. So I want to thank you for that. I wanted to give a quick update on the energy, the Village Energy Task Force meeting that took place recently. I wanted to let you know that the board has directed staff to execute their priority, which is to review the loads for all the buildings in United, the electrical loads, what they are now and what they can possibly be in the next 5 to 10 years. And then compare those loads against the infrastructure that you currently have, all of your panels, all of your wiring. The new loads, of course, we have to accommodate charging of electric vehicles, charging of golf courses, reduction of the electric loads in the manors due to conversions to LEDs, as many of the manors have already been done. All the electrical infrastructure in your standalone laundry rooms and carports. Currently, as you know, we're having difficulty charging a couple of electric vehicles at once because we blow the fuses. So that's part of what the board has requested staff to get a proposal from the consultant, the Energy Coalition, to look into, and then compare those loads against the infrastructure that you have and see what upgrades may be needed. We don't have a program for replacing and upgrading some of those panels that you have. We do have a replacement program for the Push-O-Matic panels, as you know, and we're moving forward on that. You've approved a 5-year contract to complete as many of those as possible. But there are other panels and other circuits that need to be looked at, and then they need to be addressed over the next 10, 20 years. So the consultant will be looking at all of that and coming up with a strategic plan for you to fund those upgrades in the coming years. Another priority that was given to the consultant was to look into the charging of electric vehicles and the opportunity to do that either by the laundry, standalone laundry rooms, or any other opportunity that there could be found within the mutual to do that. So those are two things that your consultant will be looking at. So I just wanted to give you that update, and that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Ernesto.
Oh, Mr. Chair, we need to take member comments.
Yes, Janie already told me. I apologize for that. Do we have any comments? you like to come up and give us your name and manor number, please?
Done. Brenda Rader, 270D. I would like the board to reconsider the rules regarding hard surface flooring in second-story buildings. I am making this request for several reasons. The first is the noise problem, which I can, personally attest to, as our upstairs neighbor has hard surface floors. We can hear walking, chairs moving, things dropping, even at 11 o'clock, at 5 o'clock in the morning. When someone in the village violates our rules, the violation usually has to wait for someone to complain or until the violation is discovered by United, perhaps at the time of the sale of the manor. But what about the lady who told me that her upstairs neighbor refused her plea to obey the rules and put in hardwood floors anyway? She told me she is literally afraid of retaliation if she reports her neighbor. Another neighbor I know asked the village to have hard surface flooring removed in the manor above him before it was put up for sale. This has not been done. The sale has been completed. So I ask you, are we enforcing our current rules against hardwood flooring in upper units? I propose that every time a second floor manor is being listed for sale that has hard surface flooring be noted in the first inspection. If not in compliance with our flooring rules, it should be replaced before escrow closes. That's what you can do now, but I would encourage you to go a step further. Please consider a revised ruling that hard surface floors have been grandfathered in must put carpet over those areas. Carpet will limit transmission of footsteps, chair scraping, and even deaden transmission of voices and TV sounds. I know that there may be concerns about the carpets possibly interfering with walkers or wheelchairs, but people who use these items have no problem with the carpet we are now standing on, which is available in many styles and designs. I'm actually thinking of doing that in my bedrooms. If a carpet is not mandated to cover the hard surface flooring or a suitable replacement is not installed, then I believe it is your responsibility as our landlord to pass a ruling that any person buying a lower unit that has hardwood floors above it receive written notice of this condition. They have a right to know what to expect. We weren't told, and it was a surprise. Everything in life is a trade-off. In this case, it is one person's wants versus another person's need for peace and quiet. If you have any questions about this, I invite you to come for a sleepover at our manor so you can experience firsthand the magnitude of the problem. Thank you. Also, one more thing, if any of you noticed, in the Orange County Register, and then it was produced in the Globe, someone wrote in about the condo she had purchased and had obviously not read the rules and regulations and put in hardwood flooring, and they are making her take it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We are working on that with the architectural committee. Janie here is the chairperson of that committee, and we are updating the ruling on that item. So there will be something, we haven't voted on that yet, have we?
It went to the board.
It did go to the board?
I believe it, not yet.
I don't
Not
think it
yet.
has yet. It will be going
It's
to the
on its
board.
way.
We've heard many concerns like you've just given
Yeah.
us, and we are working on it. We do not retaliate, by the way, but we do look into the concerns of all of our residents.
May I make a statement?
Sure.
The village often says we are their eyes and ears, but it's always very difficult for neighbors to tell on other neighbors. So my thought is we need to come up with a way to see what's there and make sure that whatever rules you've put in place are followed. And as I said in my statement, when a unit goes up for sale, I understand that a first inspection is done by the village, noting anything that's non-compliant. But they do not note the flooring. So I think it's important to have the flooring noted. And then when it's sold or an offer is in on the property, that is taken care of. And also, I believe that people are unaware that are interested in purchasing that rule is even in play. They're just not told about it.
I would be more than happy to meet with you after the meeting, and we can discuss this.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Yes, Pat?
Yes, I think another important thing is the realtors, really and truly, if they know about what's going on upstairs, they need to put it in their disclosure statement. And I don't think they're doing that for the most part.
Yes. Gary?
I have a reply to this. I bought my manor because it was upstairs and I didn't want anyone above me. It has laminate, not wood floors, and it had that when I bought it. I cannot have carpeting because I have an allergy to dust, and the carpet holds the dust, and so there are just different reasons for not buying down below. And I'm going to say that the same as I had the option of buying up, you had the option of buying down, and you chose down.
But
And
I
there,
didn't know what was up.
Let him finish, please.
that's it.
All right, thank you, Gary. Anyone else? Yes, Jenny?
I just want to say, we're looking into the new sound codes through our new policy that we're looking at through our committee. So it doesn't help your problem right now, it helps in the future.
I look forward to speaking with you after the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Dick, you had a comment?
Oh, I just wanted to ask Jamie if she'd give us a preview of what they're thinking about, and I think she just did.
Oh, okay. Okay, we have anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, come forward, please.
Can I also meet with you because I have the same situation on the flooring? This is hard for me, I'm sorry. My name is Joan Beatty, 86D. I'm here to ask questions about the elevator lifts.
Okay,
Instead of getting rumors, I want to ask you.
all right.
Okay, right? I know now there'll probably be more of them because you've passed the resolution for disability, and so anybody can now have an elevator lift. My question is, how many are there in the village? How much do they cost per year for maintenance, routine, and repairs? And how often do they break down?
Okay,
Okay.
the exact, I'm not sure of the exact number, about 15? Are there 20?
Yeah, it's a relatively nominal number, and relative to the maintenance, once you install it, the mutual actually
Yeah,
does all the maintenance.
Which I pay for.
Right, as part of the mutual, yeah.
And so what are the figures on how much it costs per year?
They're kind of expensive, about $50,000.
That's the cost. I'm talking about
To
the
install,
repairs.
yeah.
Oh, repairs, you don't worry.
Repairs.
Once it's installed, as Ernesto said, we become the owner of the lift and we take care of it.
Right, and we pay a portion of it.
Yeah,
Well,
I-
out of our assessments, yes.
right, I
Yes.
don't have the repair costs handy,
Okay,
but I can make that available to you.
I'd love to have it for my neighbors. We're just tossing it back and forth, and so I came here to ask you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, we go to the consent item on the calendar. Any questions on that? Anything you want pulled?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I typically encourage the committee to not pull this and rather to ask me questions and email me, and I'll be happy to provide the answers before the meeting so that you're fully informed. This case, today, though, I like to pull it myself.
Oh, okay.
Because I do have, as you know, this lags about a month in updates. So whenever there are pertinent updates, I will pull it and just let you know. So if I may,
Certainly.
just a couple of items I'd like to update you on. On the epoxy waste lining remediation, just wanted to let you know that the report indicates 107 buildings. It's actually, we've actually completed 118 buildings so far this year. And of course, we anticipate completing 120 buildings. On the energy consultant services, I briefly talked about what the priority is that they'll be looking into. We've conveyed that priority to the consultant, and they're preparing a work plan, and we'll be developing a proposal for us to bring back to the Energy Committee so that we can get authorization from United to move forward with that expenditure. As you may recall, this was a $50,000 not-to-exceed contract, and the way we were going to approach it is that before any priorities are looked into by the consultant, we would ask for a proposal from them and bring them back to you so that you can authorize us to move forward with that. So we'll be doing that and bringing them back to the committee. Item number 10, which is the asphalt paving program and Parkway concrete replacement. I wanted to report that that program is completed. Unfortunately, we did run into some emergency work, and there's an item on your agenda for funding that I will be discussing when we get to it. The Pushmatic electric panel replacement. The report, the last update indicates 177 panels replaced. Actually, we're now at 207 panels up to today. And then, of course, the Shepherd's Crook program. We've executed a program, a contract. The board approved it, and we're waiting for a schedule for the fabrication and installation of the Shepherd's Crook from the contractor. As soon as we have that, we'll make it available to the committee. And those are all the updates that I have for you today.
Thank you, Ernesto. Any questions? Yes.
I've noticed that on most of these items where it said estimated completion, you have an annual estimated completion date of December 2018. And I know for a fact that in many of these instances, they go beyond December 2018, like the waistline remediation. That should take at least another, 3, 4, 5, 6 years or what have you. So I guess my question is, okay, we only seem to be doing this on an annual basis. Why aren't we really putting the dates that we feel the completion is going to be completed, okay? And the actual, putting the bow on the package, okay, and saying we're done, okay?
Sure. Mr. Sheriff, I'd be happy to address that. That's a very good question. In fact, some of these programs are ongoing programs. They're not annual programs and then they complete and are done. So what we tend to report on is on your initial appropriation. So you appropriated a certain amount of dollars this year to complete that program. So we report on it as a project for this year, which you funded. So, but in fact, you're correct, and we do mention in there that it's really a 5-year program, and the X number, like 1,000 some panels for the Pushmatic panels that we'll be completing. But to date, we consider it as a project for this year so that we can provide better statistics on it. But that's a very good question. We did add the cumulative expenditures on some of those programs so that you know how much we spent to date on the program itself. But again, we want to report on it as a project for this year.
And I understand what you're saying, okay, but my concern is on the overall, okay, it gives one the false sense since this gets published, okay, it gives one the false sense that wasteline remediation program will be done December 2018, because not everybody reads the whole thing. They basically just focus on, oh, when are we going to get this done? And they see 2018 there staring them in the face, okay? And since we basically put budgets together for this year and for next year, okay, and that has been a whole issue that's come up, okay, whereby we're trying to expedite the wasteline remediation program, and I just focus in on that because that seems to be Gary and I's pet peeve right now. Maybe we should basically be looking in terms of the fact of saying that this apportionment, okay, is going to be done, the monies for this is going to be done December 2018, but the projected final thing is going to be, let's say, 2022, or whatever the date is, okay? We don't address that portion. It seems like it's an ongoing thing, and it doesn't give one. I came from an industry whereby we had a drop-dead date, okay? We had to commission that plant on such and such a date. We had no recourse, okay? So, I mean, it's just my suggestion, but I think that's the way we should at least address it.
I think it's a very good suggestion. We can add under the description of the program when we anticipate completing the program, because in fact, you're going to accelerate that program significantly. The board approved $2.3 million in funding for this program, so you're going to shrink that horizon significantly. So it'd be good to have that in there. I think that that's a very good suggestion. We'll go ahead and add that to the description of the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Dale?
Yeah, just another note that may help. If we can put a percentage of
Percentage of completion.
for this particular project, I think that's also going to help us understand quicker. Because I think, everybody's looking at it as a glimpse rather than a long period of time. This is project going to extend different years. So that may help.
Okay, good ideas. And Pat?
Yes, Ernesto, I'm going to move one step ahead now, because I'm concerned about our report on the reserve expenditures and the operating expenditures. As you can see, the reserve expenditures we've only incurred $5 million out of our budgeted, which was $12 million in 2018. And same with our operating expenses. We've only incurred $2.6 million out of the budgeted 4.7. Could you give us a little update on, do you think that we're going to spend all this before the end of 2018, or what's your on this? Are we going to hire more people? Are we going to hire more outside services to get the work done, or what's going to happen, or aren't we going to get it done again?
No, that's a very good question, and it's something that I believe the board has grappled with over the years. The inability of staff to spend all the money that you budget within a fiscal period. It is our goal as your current staff to spend all of your money within the fiscal year that you budgeted. That is challenging at times for a number of reasons. We do a lot of what we do here through consensus, and there's a lot of stuff that we pilot, so there's a lot of delays associated with getting the programs completed. However, it's still our goal to spend that money for you whenever you budget it. So specific to your question, a lot of the programs that you have in place don't actually take place in the beginning of the year. They take place towards the end of the year. Some of them are your gutter programs, some of your roofing programs. So you don't see all the expenditures reflected mid-year, as you would expect it intuitively to see it. So you're going to see those expenditures towards the end of the year. The other factor that makes the reported amounts lag is the invoicing. As I said before, I'm really not sure how these companies operate. If I had a company, I would invoice immediately once I deliver the product. But some of these companies just don't invoice. We have to go after them. Please invoice so we can update our records. So the invoicing lags. So that's another reason why you don't see the actual percentages reflected in there. So I would suggest to you that we, first of all, it's our goal to spend that money the year that you approve it, in the fiscal year you approve it. And then we will see those numbers actually kick up higher as we approach the end of the year.
Thank you, Ernesto.
Thank you, Ernesto. Gary?
To add to that, we set up a budget each year based on what we foresee as problems in the village. And we estimate what those dollars are going to be. We have had a director or two who seems confused that if we do not spend all of that money, that's excess money, and that's not the case. The problems don't go away. We're just pushing the problems farther out, and those monies are going to be expended.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a very good observation, Director Morrison. In addition to that, I'd like to add that some of the monies that you allocate on an annual basis are contingency monies for walls that may experience structural problems, for panels that may fail. In fact, one of the reports in front of you today is to appropriate additional funding for a panel that was falling apart because it was rusted out. There's other contingencies, the paving contingency that we just encountered, where we had a failure of the subgrade in one of our cul-de-sacs. So those are things, those are monies that are budgeted for contingencies. Sometimes we use those fundings, sometimes we don't. So, but you do want to have that money allocated in the event that you need it, so.
Okay, yes.
In the world that I came from, we not only had a contract value, then we had a committed value, and then we had basically the invoice value, okay? And the commitment value was if we let the contract for, let's say, $250,000, that was a commitment of $250,000, which means that money will be spent, okay? But we haven't been invoiced for it, so maybe we've only gotten $50,000 worth of invoices, okay? We don't ever see a commitment value on these charts here, okay? We only see the actual invoice value, and I've heard you say that on more than one occasion, and I understand that with regard to the fact that you haven't been invoiced for this. The guy has taken 3 months, 90 days, 120 days to send you a bill, okay? But we know that that's money that we actually have already spent, but we haven't been billed for it. If we had a commitment table, okay, whereby we specifically said, we know that bill's coming, okay, that money's already spent, it's just that we haven't gotten a bill for it, that would sort of like ease the questionings to you that says that, well, what's the story? Why aren't we spending that money? Well, we've really spent it, but we haven't been billed for it yet. So that's the first question I have for you, okay? And the second portion of that is the fact that on the reserve expenditures, I don't see the toilet replacement. Is that under some other section?
No, it is.
I don't see it.
Mr. Chair?
I may,
Yeah.
obviously, as I'm getting older, my eyesight's not as good as it used to be. I mean,
No. Let me tell you where that's located. That's operating. We have, it's actually in 2 locations in your reserve funding. One of them is under basins, sinks, and toilets. We have an appropriation in there to replace toilets, and that's a small amount of about $8,000, $9,000. You don't see it because it's the total amount that you see is the $516,000, approximately $516,000 that was originally budgeted. But under that main category, there is at least, in this case, 30 accounts. And many of them have to do with the basins, with the sinks and faucets, with the countertops, but there is toilet replacement as well in there. There is $352,000 actually allocated for toilet replacement. And if you look in your toilet report that you
Yeah,
received with.
I saw
it's-
that.
We're very, very behind in installation of toilets. And there's a couple reasons for that. I won't get into it, but I think I was hoping to answer your question relative to the funding. So that's where the funding is at. Relative to your first question, it's really the difference between allocation and appropriation. So you allocate funding through your budget process to do a certain program. Within that allocation, we use a portion to award a contract. Sometimes that contract may be higher, in which case we come to you and we ask for a supplemental appropriation. Sometimes those contracts are lower and there's a remaining balance on the account, which may be either used or not used. But as far as the contract award amount, that information is not provided in the project log. What we do provide in there is the budget, the total budget that you allocate. So that, because we feel that your interest as a legislative body here is to see your total amount that you appropriated to get that program going and to get that program completed, not necessarily the contract amount. If you want the contract information, I'll be happy to provide that to you and on a one-on-one basis. But we do provide us the budget amount and then the amount that is being invoiced against that. Now, that invoiced amount could be the contract, could be additional testing that gets done outside of the contract for that work. So it's a composite of everything that's being done to get that program completed for you. So what this gives you is an overall, a global picture of the funding that you allocated for the program to get this program done. However, we got it done either through contracted services or through in-house staffing, and then how much we've spent so far and how much we've invoiced against it.
Yeah, I understand that, but the thing right now is, okay, from the perspective of a lot of things that have happened recently with regard to the budget, where people are saying that we're not spending, so why should we basically add more money to the budget this year with additional assessments, okay? And because of our fiduciary responsibility, because our fiduciary responsibility doesn't only look at the budget, it looks at how you're spending the money, okay? I think that the contract amount and what is committed against the contract is a number that we should probably, as the MNC committee, be aware of. Okay, that's my personal opinion. I don't know if the other committee members have the same opinion, but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, we're getting off of into the area that Gary has and into accounting and funding and a lot of detail. So there's merit what you say, Carl, but if there are any changes that want to be made, I think we should go through Gary's committee on that. Appreciate your input. Steve?
Because you're moving to approve the consent items, I had a request, since no one else has asked, that you pull the copper pipe supply line leak report, because I just had a chance to look at it briefly this morning.
We'll actually we're discussing it, Steve. There's an item, there's a report on it.
Okay.
It's up, but we can, it's in the consent, but my intention was to actually pull it and talk about it.
Okay, that was my only request, that you spent a little bit of time talking about that, because
Okay.
it is such an important item and it's a first report.
Thank you. Dick?
I don't know when the appropriate time to bring this up, but are we going to get any information on the potential savings from the solar panel project?
Yes.
I may answer that. We're still waiting for JCI to provide the report. They're required to provide a report to the board on, it was due in July. We are still waiting for that report. And as soon as we get it, we'll package it and bring it to the committee so that you know what those numbers are. We'll also be bringing it to the Village Energy Task Force, so you know what those figures are.
Yes, we're quite curious about that. I know Third, at their last meeting, gave their report on savings, and it was quite a bit. So I'm curious, as you are, to find out how much, what we've done.
I have a question.
Yes, Jenny?
Ernesto, I was just wondering, in our contract, is there a provision on the time period that that report is due? It seems like, the report was as of the end of June, is that correct? And here it is, almost the end of August?
Yes, it was actually due in July, but they do have a grace period to provide it.
How long is that?
I believe it's a month. I don't want to tell you, but there is several weeks that they're allowed a grace period to provide it. And again, I'm not a big fan of how that contract was written, but part of their practice is to allow themselves that grace period so that we can continue to fund their management services that they provide to us. And they will not provide that report until we pay for those management services, which will be probably declining in the future. But at this point, we sent them the funding for that management fee, and we're waiting for the report, and they're still within their grace period. So pretty soon, they should be submitting that for us.
We've been asking this question, quite a few committee members at different meetings and all too, wondering, where is this report? Why is it Third has theirs and we don't have ours? It was a different company, is that
Yeah,
right?
it was a different company, and the report is actually prepared by staff using information from the website that collects some of the data from our inverters. So it's with United, it's a different contract as Third. It's actually a performance-based contract. So the way it was written, it required JCI to actually provide you a report and let you know what the generation was and any deficiencies related to that, because they're required to provide certain amount of generation. So they're structured differently. So in Third, we actually went in and we looked at the portals, the website portals that collect the data from our inverters, and we put the report together for them.
So are we in communication with JPI, telling them we really would like to see the report?
They're fully aware of it. In fact, I've had a couple of conversations with them and told them that we're anxious to get that report.
Okay, thank you.
Don,
Yes, Pat?
will we be getting a report from you guys, BMS, that's similar to what Third is? In other words, like an audit of what JCI has done? Will we be getting anything like that?
What we'll be doing, Pat, is we're going to be reviewing the JCI report, and we'll be asking questions of them, and to make sure that when we bring the information to you, it's already vetted through staff. So we'll be going through that process once they provide it to us. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Steve?
Just quickly as an aside, yes, you're waiting for the report from JCI, which is going to be a very comprehensive report because it will look at the amount of electricity generated within the annual period. It will look at the amount of money that was spent by the mutual in the expense of electricity to SCE. So, they have to look at a couple of different things to pull it all together. However, what is available to you at any time is the amount of kilowatt hours that were generated each month.
Yeah.
We have that through the Locus system, which is online, and that it's readily available. So, for example, you can go and if, say, in June you generated X number of thousands of kilowatts, and it also shows you what was anticipated to be generated according to the original JCI. So you could get a rough at any time by going and collecting as many months of that information and just using a ballpark figure of 18 cents per kilowatt, which I believe is the GS1 rate. It's like 17.5 cents. And that'll give you a ballpark. So you could come out and say, we saved 1.2 megawatts worth of generation in the last 12 months, which approximates $235,000 worth of savings. So, if you really want to get something quick and dirty, you can. but this final report from JCI is going to be rather in-depth because they have to pull all of the bills on all of the meters and get all of this from SCE as well. And finance should also have some of this information available to them in the form of what the monthly expenditures have been to Southern California Edison.
Yeah, no, that is correct, and that's why staff's been reluctant to actually cramp some numbers for you, because we're going to get a very accurate report from JCI, and they're required by contract to produce that. So I didn't want to commit staff time to do that for you, but like Steve said, you can do a very quick, synopsis of where we're at right now. But hopefully we'll get that report from JCI shortly, and we'll present that to you. We have accurate figures.
Dick?
I just simply want to make a comment. JCI is a well-respected company, a publicly owned company, and they know their responsibilities. There's no excuses. They knew what they had to do, and so let them do it. That's it. I don't care how many receipts they have to look at. That's their responsibility, and they knew it.
Yes, I agree. They will definitely follow through on that. Dale?
Yeah, just a comment. I think you mentioned about, Mutual, I thought Mutual is having their staff to do the reporting. Why is that, and why are we not doing that? The other thing that I'm aware of, and I've been involved in this business for a long while, whatever JCI has been doing is very extensive. It's very difficult to digest. I think we need to have someone that in our capacity to kind of understand it, evaluate it, and also do a comparison just to making sure that what they're doing is correct. Reading bills is one thing, but it's very complicated, as you know. So I don't know, what you folks have in mind in terms of how you're going to evaluate, how you're going to bring the information to us so it's easy for us to understand it, and it's going to have to be accurate.
That's a good point. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So once we get the report, staff will go through it. There's some local talent in the community. We got Steve, who's been involved with this project for a while. He understands it probably better than I do. So there's folks in the community as well as in staff, analysts that will be looking at this data and first of all, make sure that any questions are addressed, and then we'll bring it forward to you so that we can answer any questions directly to you.
Juanita?
We all know it's budget time. We all know it's the end of our, that we're doing an end-of-the-year report of everything that we've done this last year and justifying the amounts in the budget, et cetera, that we are putting forth. And while I know that what we're going to get from JCI is going to be super intensive and much more of what we can really work on, I think we need now those rough figures so that we can justify when we're selling this budget to our residents at least a number, and we can qualify it and say this isn't the final, but that we've come up with that amount of savings, and this is how much electricity we've produced, the things that Steve was talking about. I think that kind of report now, rather than waiting until our next meeting in October to hopefully get the JCI report, would be very beneficial to this board.
Thank you, Juanita. You have a comment on
Mr.
that?
Sheriff, if I may? Yeah, just real quick, we'll be happy to produce that. We can go ahead and produce that for you.
Okay.
And we'll preface it by saying that, the data may or may not be as close to JCI as, but we can certainly go in the portals, like Steve said, pull that data out, multiply it out by the factor of the charge, and try to come up with a close approximation of how much your system has generated so far. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, I have one last question. Whatever happened to that meter thing that they gave us? It used to be out here in the hall. Do you know, Steve?
Yes, the equipment itself, the TV screen and the interface to the Wi-Fi.
Yes.
That belongs to the mutual. It's mutual property. They're mutual assets. However, They only connected to the locus reporting system, basically the guest system, just like you have Wi-Fi in your house and you have
Yeah.
guest Wi-Fi. So it was for a limited period of time. I think it was only 90 days. It may have been 180 days. And then the communication protocol was cut because it was only for a limited period of time. And that guest network is no longer accessible because I had the link to the guest network, and I also had the link to the official network. And I found that I wasn't able to get on that guest work anymore months and months and months and months and months ago. So, but the equipment is still there. So if you want to use the TV and the stand and the Wi-Fi for some other purpose, you're free to do so. But yeah, you're no longer paying for the right to access the data in a public fashion. But you do have, staff does have access through the official protocol. And I think they bought the locus access in the package. I think it was for 5 years, as I recall.
Right.
And then at that point, you can decide to renew it if you like, or just have Phoenix, your O&M
Provider, yeah.
provider, monitor that, and they will have to incur their own expense in accessing the data because it will be part of the contract that they're required to do that, right?
Right. So we'll
Thank you.
We'll extract whatever data it's available through the protocol, and then we'll come up with give you an idea of how much you generated and what possible cost savings you've realized.
Thank you. Yes, Jenny.
So Ernesto, next year, can you give us some type of figures when our budget starts, our budget period, so we have more information at that point? Would that be possible?
Certainly, the budget figures that actually are in the budget, that the proposed budget for 2019 are related to your O&M, your contract that you have with Phoenix, that's the name of the company, that's actually making sure that your panels are clean, and they do monitor the system to ensure that if their system gets disconnected or something fails, that they alert us, so we can send somebody out there to flip the switches and see what the problem is. So as far as the budget is concerned, those are the figures that are in there, which I believe is a total of $25,000 we put in there for that.
My real question is, because we don't have the total report now, and we're, like Juanita stated, we're in the tail end of our budget period of making decisions, is it possible to have some type of a figure in the beginning of our budget time when we start deciding and looking at the budgets for 2020?
Oh, absolutely. What I'll do is.
That's my question.
Yeah, no. I'll be happy to provide some budgetary figures based on the information that we collect. We'll have to make some assumptions, obviously, we don't know if the system is going to operate properly or what the solar irradiance will be and all of that. But we can certainly come up with some budgetary figures for you and let you know what the potential savings are for the 2020 budget year.
So the better solution would be to change their date that they give us the information ahead of time so we can have the correct figures for the budget.
Where it's based
But
on
I know that's probably impossible
it's
because of the way it's set up.
Right. Well, no, not only that, but it's based on a 1 year of complete.
year.
Yeah. So it's based on one complete year of production, so that they can give you some relatively accurate figures. And their contract is written in such manner that that's the trigger for the responsibility to make sure that the system produces is based on that annual review and audit of the generation.
I understand that, it's impossible, but it would be very nice and helpful.
Yeah, we can certainly give you some budgetary figures, and let you know approximately what we anticipate will be generated.
I think what Janie is referring to is the actual expense that the mutual incurs annually from SCE, right?
That's true, but I'm also looking at our credit that we get through our solar program also. So we have a more solid figure to start with when we start looking at our budgets.
So what I would suggest is that in finance, Gary get a report from Betty for the electric bills for the last 12 months. And then you can guesstimate
The
what
production.
your annual expense,
Right.
the production, what your annual expense will be out of pocket to SCE next year. Because that's really what you need to check. And I don't remember what the numbers were, but I think in the budget, it was $135,000 for SCE or something.
Yeah, I don't have those figures, but I think
don't,
that that's
but-
correct. So we can get that from finance, and then
Right.
you can compare it with our estimate of what the system would produce
Well,
for you.
even forgetting that estimate, what JCI reports and how much you generated, what the actual credit was, what you really want to know going forward in your budget, how much are we going to have to pay SCE
And
for
utility
the
costs.
electricity that we're using that we're not generating?
Absolutely.
So that's, you know, you want to say, well, it's 10,000 a month, or it's 8,000 a month, or it's 15,000 a month, so you have a net number to properly budget in the year for that utility expense.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Good comments, thank you very much. Okay, we go on to item 13, supplemental appropriation for emergency panels.
Yeah,
Ernesto?
Mr. Chair, if you can approve the rest of the consent calendar?
I thought we did.
No. So just get a, yeah,
right.
if you could.
I move we approve the consent
There's
calendar.
a second.
I'll second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, please signify it's been approved. Thank you.
And then
Now,
Ms.
item 13.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I may, one more time
Sure.
indulge you, I just wanted to briefly talk about the copper pipe
Oh.
report, which happens to be under consent as well, but I think I provided this report as a informational item, and that's why it's in the consent calendar. But just briefly, I just wanted to mention that this year you allocated about $250,000 for the potential of lining your supply lines that we're having problems with. As we do on a quarterly basis, we run a report that tells us what the number of leaks are that we've been experiencing in United. And while the report indicates that from 2012 to 2016, we had a decrease in the number of leaks, the numbers that we're plotting for 2017 and 18 and the first and 2 quarters of 18 are showing a slight increase in the number of leaks in the mutual. So we've taken action and we brought to you a recommendation to award a contract to retain a contractor to begin to line some of these buildings that are problematic. You already awarded the contract, and they'll be starting with that work. The company, it's called E-Pipe, and they'll be starting, actually, they were supposed to start last month. I think that they're going to be starting this month. But they will address that emerging trend that you're seeing right now. There's a total of actually 15 buildings that are experiencing problems, and we hope to complete those by the end of 2019. This year, with the funding that you've appropriated, we'll be able to complete 6 buildings, and then we'll complete the other 9 next year with the funding that you already have appropriated for that. Just as a side note, there's 1,100 buildings in United approximately, and only 6 of them have really necessitated the epoxy lining, which is what you would expect. You know, this pipe shouldn't really be failing. If they're failing, there's specific reason as to why they're failing, and we've studied that, and there's some reasoning that was provided some time back. But bottom line, there's very few, so it's just a number that is expected, and we'll continue to monitor that and make sure that the funding that you allocate goes towards mitigating that. So that was my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ernesto. Questions on that, Carl?
I have if you might indulge me, I have a query regarding these pipes. It seems to be happening in certain buildings, so it tells me that either that particular contract was using not the same gauge of pipe, but they were using throughout the other portions of the village, or the pipe itself, okay, was in a lot whereby it was causing pinhole leaks to occur, whereby this particular pipe was not really very good to begin with, or the sweated joints are starting to leak. Where are we? Did you say we've done some sort of analysis and determined that, dealing with joints that basically they used the wrong flux or what have you and used the wrong solder? Or did they have pipes that basically were not in the same gauge that they should have been, okay? Or what's the story with it?
Sure, Mr. Chair. That's a very good question. There's two types of pipes that you can use for typical residential construction. There's an L and an M. The only difference is that their thickness, their gauge, one is thinner than the other. We have a combination. I think that initially when they started constructing the community, they began with some of the thinner pipes, and then over the years, they transferred to the thicker wall pipe. But the cost of that, and they did sometime in 2010, I like to say, or maybe even before that, they commissioned a report from a corrosion engineer to study the pipes and see what the cost was associated with the leaks. And what they came up with was that apparently the flux that they were using, and the flux is a material that they use to mix with the welding so that they can actually, it's in the industry, it's called sweating the pipe, which is actually burning weld material around a pipe. The flux that was used was left inside of the pipe in excess amounts. And this it's a very corrosive material, and that caused some of the pinhole leaks. The pinhole leaks are essentially just what it implies, a very tiny failure in the pipe that allows small amounts of water to just squirt regularly. And then, so that the majority of the leaks are associated with those pinholes, and we're probably addressing the majority of them by doing these programs. So that shouldn't be a problem. We don't experience a lot of leaks on the joints where you have a sleeve or a T or an L welded on and sweated on. They're really pinhole leaks that we're experiencing. There's two parts of this program. There is a reactive and a proactive part. The reactive is that when we hear of a manor that's experiencing problems within a building, we go address that manor. But the proactive part is that we not only address that manor, we address the entire building. Because the likelihood is that if they created a problem, they created it throughout the whole building. So we address the entire building to do that. So hopefully I addressed your question somewhere in there.
Yeah, you did, except for one additional item, and that is, since this United was built in waves, if you will, okay, there are certain buildings, okay, that had the old pipe, okay, and there are certain buildings that have the new pipe, and I guess what I'm hearing here is you're seeing this in only certain buildings where that particular construction happened during those years, correct?
That's correct.
So other portions of the village are probably not going to see this, is that?
It's very unlikely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like I said, we have about 1,100 plus buildings in the community, and we've only lined very, very few of them.
Right.
So, and that's what you would expect on this type of pipe.
Thank you.
Steve, comment?
My recollection is that United was built out basically before Third was. I think the first condos were put up in 69 or 70 at 969. So my recollection is that the difference in the pipes actually occurred after 1970 when those units were built. So I'm thinking, just based on my recollection, that we pretty much have a continuity within United as to the thickness of the walls of the pipe that was used. The discrepancies will probably show up more in Third, based on what's in gates 5 and 6 and what got built out west. What I did want to ask on this leak report was, We've had a lot of conversation about the shut-off valves in the units getting corroded and leaking. And so my question is, when we go to the time and the expense of relining the copper pipes, are we changing out all the valves in the manors?
I'm glad you asked that question. This is actually a positive thing that we're doing with this program. It's we are replacing the shut-off valves with ball valves, which is the type of valve that you really want in there. And many of our manors are actually don't have a valve. So if we're going to work on a manor, we have to shut the whole building. So we leave everybody without water, without having, whenever we're going to work on a unit. So part of what we're doing now is we're adding those isolation valves so that we can work in your manor without affecting your neighbor. And the other thing about this program that we're doing is that we're also inspecting the mixing valves in your shower. The valve that you actually turn to get your hot water and control the temperatures and all of that. We're inspecting those because we have to take them apart. And if there's problems with them, they will be replaced with new ones, which is another source of problems that we have with in our bathrooms.
So I was thinking the valves at the toilet, those stops, the one at the toilet, cold water, hot water, at the basins, are all those being replaced as well?
The gate, the little valves, the toilets, we're not replacing those unless they need to be replaced. But we do have a program, though. I've given direction to staff that it's, as a matter of departmental policy now, whenever there's a problem or whenever we change the toilet, that those get replaced with new ball valves.
The
Yes.
angle,
Yes, the angle stops.
the 90-degree stops.
The angle stops, yeah.
So my original question and concern was, if we're going through all this time and expense on relining the copper pipes within the building, while we're there, why don't we tear out all these old cold water and hot water valves that are maybe is 50 years old while we're in there and the building is shut down and the residents are being inconvenienced, rather than doing the relining and then having a situation where an old valve later fails and then we have a water intrusion event that costs us several $1,000s. I mean, if you've got kitchen sink, bathroom sink, and a toilet, you're talking 5 valves. If you've got 2 bathrooms, it's 7 valves. The cost per valve replacement at $100 a piece for the materials and the plumber. If you're going to go spend all that money in the building, well, can we spend another $500 or $600 per manor while we're there to avoid a future failure of a valve that's 40, 50 years old? That's, if I was on the committee, I would make that recommendation.
Would you like me to provide a response?
Yeah, would that be cost effective to do it that way?
Well, I'm not sure it would be cost effective if these folks are stopping to do that. One of the concerns that I have with doing that is that this program is very intrusive. It requires us to go in there to plastic all the floors, to ask the resident to be out of their unit possibly for the whole day. They don't have to be out, but it's our preference that they're out because we'll be laying out hoses throughout the manor. So it's fairly intrusive. And one of the things that I've asked the contractor is that I want them in and out. Yeah. And when they're done, I want everything cleaned up. I don't want hoses laid out overnight, and I don't want anything like that. So doing this would imply that they would be doing additional work in the manor. So that's one factor. The other factor is the cost factor. And this is a challenge that we staff face with just about every program that you fund. Is where do we stop? Where do we draw the line? Because every time I go out in the community to look at a problem that somebody brings up to my attention, I turn around and I end up with 10 things that I want to fix. We're in a fixing mode here from prior deferred maintenance. So we can't, it's a matter of money. we can essentially ask the contractor to provide a cost to do that so that you can review it. But again, it will increase the timing that we're going to keep residents out of their manors, and it will increase the cost. So those are the two.
Don?
Interesting. Yes, Pat?
In my opinion, our concern should be with the work of the plumbers and the plumbers' helpers. And we already are in a situation where apparently we don't have enough time to get all the work done. We don't want to be adding something like this. Plus, of course, the cost would, beside the inconvenience to the owner, the resident, would be all kinds of other problems too. I don't think that's a good idea at this time.
It's something to think about, Steve. There's pros and cons on
You
that.
spend $1.5 million a year
Yeah.
in water
Water
intrusion.
leaks.
Whatever
Yeah.
steps you can do to minimize
And we
that.
need to go on. One more comment then. Yes, Carl?
I would just like to comment, it's an issue that this committee and the board have got to address as far as cost is concerned. I came from a house of 3,000 square feet, 4 bathrooms, okay, and then about 2 other sinks, okay. And because of the fact that I'm an engineer, okay, within a year after I purchased the house, I knew that they had those old crappy valves, okay, on there. So I hired a plumber to come in and change out all of my valves to ball valves under the sinks and in the bathrooms, in the various other places. And then they put the anti-burst lines from the valve into the actual sink or toilet or whatever it is. And it took the guy 2 hours to get all of those things done, okay? And the cost wasn't really a lot, okay, but at the end of the day, I didn't have another leak in my house.
That's good to hear. All right, we need to go on. Yeah, Jane?
I just want to make a quick comment. If there's some way, Gary, you can make a notation for next year's budget, it's something that I'd like to see staff look into as far as costs and have it in our budget next year.
You have a comment on that? Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Every time we come up with costs, we have the community coming down on us that they don't want to pay any extra costs. Now, somewhere along the line, we have to have some give and take here because we're not going to get things taken care of if we can't assess people more dollars per month.
Thank you. We need to go on. Let's, now, item 13. Ernesto, you want to talk about the supplemental appropriations for this?
Absolutely. I think that I could go on about what this is all about, but I think that the pictures, and if you could put those pictures up real quick.
Yeah, are those our panels?
Yeah, that's this particular panel, or it used to be this particular panel. There's only about half of it left there. So again, this was, there's a picture on your screen of what the bottom of this cabinet looked like. Obviously, not something that we want to have around. This is not only the problem that we have with losing energy in our manors, but also the problem that we could have in having somebody electrocuted from it. So we do proactively go out and inspect panels on a regular basis. This panel, we found this particular panel to be in this condition, so we went ahead and we committed the funding to do the replacement. It was about a $48,000 cost. That has already been completed. And at this point, what we're asking you is to authorize a supplemental appropriation of the $48,000 from the replacement reserve fund to take care of this emergency item.
Don?
Okay. Pat?
I move that we authorize a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $48,000 from the replacement reserve fund to take care of the emergency electrical panels.
Your second? It's been seconded by...
I'll second.
Carl was up there first.
Okay.
Got any now comments on this? Carl?
Obviously, we have to fix these things because you can't have people electrocuted and you can't have panels with openings whereby people can stick their hands in there and get electrocuted with cables in it. However, my question is, it says here that as a result of irrigation and climate caused the deterioration, which gives me the impression that the sprinklers were sort of hitting this panel every time they went on. And possibly were in an area where there was some moisture and what have you. And obviously, we don't want to have this happen again, so what are we doing to mitigate this around any of the other panels where we find out that irrigation, meaning sprinklers, are hitting the panel, or it's in an area whereby there are vines or what have you around it, and it's causing the moisture to be entrained and causing it to rust, okay? Are we doing anything to mitigate this happening in the future, okay? We may find some other panels like this because obviously that happens every once in a while. But that would be my concern right now. It happened, we got to fix it. How do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is definitely not putting panels in the pathway of our irrigation. They're mounted higher on the walls. These panels, the existing panels, were mounted right at the level of the irrigation. So whether they were being hit by irrigation or not, they were definitely getting some of that moisture. And they were close to the ground, so you do get considerable moisture. Being in a community that's coastal, we do get a lot of that dew, which is salt, has high content of salt. So all of those things obviously were not well thought about when they originally constructed these panels. The other factor is that these panels are old. They're very old. The cabinets now have epoxy coatings on them. They're just built much, much better than the old cabinets were. All of the perforations into the panel for the conduits are sealed. So we don't anticipate having issues with the new panels. So we're installing them high and away from irrigation, of course.
All right, right, but I have a follow-on to that. If we have any panels right now whereby they are going to see any moisture from irrigation, from sprinkler heads or what have you, we should be tapping those things off, okay? Those sprinkler heads, and need to plant something different in that area so it doesn't need a lot of water or what have you, okay? We shouldn't continue to have, I have a guy that comes by my house maybe twice every 2 weeks or what have you, okay, and turns on the sprinklers. He knows where all the sprinkler heads are, he checks it out and what have you. At the same time, he could see whether or not this sprinkler head is actually hitting or adjacent to an electrical panel and either report it and have somebody out there to fix it, or just get that irrigation, that sprinkler head and just capping it off, okay?
Right.
So, that's a proactive way of fixing this problem for the future.
No, absolutely, and we do coordinate with landscaping to make sure that the irrigation is not shooting right into a panel, and try to eliminate as much irrigation possible around it. The bottom line is that the majority of these panels are pretty old, and they've been in these conditions for a long, long time. So we anticipate that from time to time, we don't want to go out proactively and start replacing panels if they're not, we want to use them as long as we can possibly safely use them. But you're going to encounter this condition throughout the community because that's the way they were installed. But new panels, of course, will preclude that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Steve, you can comment.
Is this a reserve item category? Do we have something in the reserves for these outside replacements?
No, there was
Okay.
no reserve for it.
So we don't have this in the reserves.
That is correct.
We have
Well,
1,124 buildings.
we're going to be adding it to
Right,
reserves.
yeah.
and-
So, and just for my own edification, these two buildings each had one 4-meter panel?
It's a 4-pack, yeah.
Yeah, so it's $24,000 a shot.
Yeah, that's,
So there you go. If you think, if some people think we have too much money in reserves, we're gonna spend it.
yeah. Yeah, this is just like the other items that we've already talked about, it came up. You can't do it all right now, you just don't have the money. but it's certainly something we can have to consider. Any other comments on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. That's approved. Next item, paving, emergency paving repairs. Ernesto?
Okay, this is another item that I'm not happy to report on, but again, it's what happens when you have large infrastructure that you have to maintain. And it's something that it cannot be predicted easily. We do, through your paving program, to which we've added the concrete repair program to, we typically try to do as much potholing as possible. Potholing being, we poke holes in the existing paving areas to determine what the structural section is, what the conditions of the soil are, in anticipation of putting the program together. We're not able to do a lot of that. We do some to reduce our liability, but in this particular case, once we were out there milling the pavement, which is part of the scope of work of the contractor, to mill or to take out a certain portion of the pavement, just with the weight of the milling machine, the pavement sank. And we were forced to remove a certain amount of the material that was there. We found that material was not competent or was not adequate to resist the loads of vehicles. And we had to actually remove it. The cost could have been that they did poor compaction originally when they built the road, or that lack of maintenance in prior years allow water intrusion into the subgrade through cracks. Now we have a pretty robust sealing program. We have a crack sealing program, a actual slurry sealing program. So we're more on top. But again, this was a fairly old piece of pavement. It failed. We had to remove it. We had to remove it on the spot. I directed staff to go ahead and do the work immediately because we didn't want to keep that pavement exposed and not allow the residents to come in and out. So we had to execute the work. It resulted in about $114,000 worth of additional work. So we're asking you again to approve a supplemental appropriation in that amount from the contingency fund for the emergency repair work.
Okay, what's this $176,000 figure?
That's the actual budgeted amount that we put
Oh, I
in
gotcha.
your 2018 budget to do your typical paving and concrete repair.
And this
So
is
obviously-
114,000 initial.
Yeah, that exceeded that amount by $114,000.
Okay, need a motion. Jenny?
I make a motion that we authorize a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $114,245.83 from the contingency fund.
Second. Okay, discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? It's been approved. Thank you, Ernesto. Flood buzz water detection device. We talked about this last meeting, and you want to bring us up to date, Ernesto?
Sure. Here's your devices. I have two devices here to demonstrate. That's the noise that they generate. So what we did is you asked us to look into these devices and kind of analyze their cost and how many places we will have to install them at, and what the industry standard is for the type of devices that we were asked to look at, their battery life, and a number of other things. We actually identified a total of about 6,000 locations where this could be installed. 45,000 locations where this could be installed to be of any benefit regarding leaks. The idea with these devices are they're relatively inexpensive, and you install them at a location where there could be a potential leak from a washing machine, from a toilet, whatever. They have two contacts in the bottom, and when those contacts make contact with the water, they generate the noise. so it alerts the resident that there is a leak. They can quickly call it in and hopefully have the leak stopped. So we looked at this, we evaluated the locations that would be of any benefit. That's actually a total of about 23,700 locations. We eliminated some of the areas where we typically don't experience leaks from those devices, like toilets and refrigerators. While we may generate some leaks at some point, but they're not excessive, so they really don't warrant the expenditure to do this. We looked at the various models that are available in the industry. There's certain spec sheets that we provided to you on what we researched. The one concern that staff came out of this whole review with is that the battery lives on these things are really 1 to 2 years. We couldn't find anything that really told us that these things are going to last past 2 to 3 years max. And they're constructed to be thrown away. So you're looking at a potential cost if you were to install these devices in the locations where the suggested locations. We're looking at an expenditure of about $142,000, which will become a recurrent expenditure to the mutual if you were to install them. So again, we're not providing recommendation either way. We're simply giving you information. We're looking for direction from the committee as to which way you want to go with this. And I have the devices here I'll pass them around so you can take a look at them.
Do you have any comments on this discussion, Carl?
The other
Thank you.
concern, Carl, the other concern that we have with these devices is that alarm may or may not be audible to some of our residents, which is a concern. If you can't hear it, you can't do anything about it. And then we don't know either what the degradation on the sound is as the battery life goes away. So that's another factor that I'm concerned about with this type of investment.
Okay, Carl had his hand up first, then Pat.
I have a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions regarding this. My understanding, based on our discussion a couple of minutes before the meeting, okay, was that, because I told you that my hot water heater is due for a change out based on the date that's on the hot water heater. And I said that when I was living in Texas, my hot water heaters that I changed out had a device where it automatically shut off the supply valve and also had an audible alarm at the same time. And you indicated that by code, that device, anybody changing out their hot water heater now within the village, you'll be installing that device to automatically shut off the supply and have an audible alarm. So in those cases where the new hot water heaters are being installed, these would not be necessary, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. By code now, when we replace a water heater, we have to provide a cutoff and an audible device.
Now, with regard to the items that we would put possibly under a kitchen sink or in a vanity of a bathroom or what have you, okay, people always have stuff underneath there, whether they have, bottles of Dawn liquid or they have towels or what have you underneath there. These devices here are only really can detect standing water, correct? So as a result of that, if you have a leak in a valve underneath your sink, okay, or from the actual faucet above, okay, until it's actually standing water, okay, you won't get any alarm. So you could have substantially a lot of water underneath there without it being standing. It would soak into the actual wood or whatever the vanity or sink is made out of before you would actually hear this go off because there's no standing water. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's it. I mean, these are good things, but they do have
We can
their...
do a quick test right now. Is your leak? So a small amount of water will actually trigger it. The concern that I have is that if you put this in a cabinet and you close the doors and you have 20 bottles in there, you're not gonna hear it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is a very good idea. However, in practice, it may not be totally in good standing with what we really are trying to achieve here. So we would have to basically be very discriminating as to where we want to install these things. And then the other thing, the fact that the actual resident, him or herself, okay, you know, they got their towels they're putting underneath their vanity, okay, and this thing's getting in the way, so they just put it on the side, okay. Nobody's to say that they're not going to move this thing from someplace else, or from where your plumber put it, okay, because there's nothing that holds it down. It's not screwed in or anything, correct? It's just there as a standalone thing. So, I mean, again, good idea. Maybe in practice it may not be able to be implemented correctly, but with hot water heaters, once you put it in there, you know,
It's hardwired.
It's hardwired.
Right.
But the thing right now is, okay, even if you put this in the hot water pan, okay, nobody's going to go into the hot water pan, okay, to move it around because they're not dealing with it on a daily basis. They're just going, it'll audibly alarm until you have the hardwired device that goes in there, and that might not be 10 years for the individual, whoever that individual is. Mine happens to be coming due. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, okay? These particular things are good, but they have their shortcomings.
Pat, comment?
Yes, I would suggest that we do not go with this idea. First of all, because of recurring costs that are probably going to incur, not likely to, with the fact that the battery doesn't last for very long. So we've got a problem there. We've got people who won't even understand what's going on when that buzzer goes off. I think it's going to cause more problems than it is solutions. Not only that, I think that the majority of our people are sensible enough to know if they have a leak somewhere and report it. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the board? Steve?
Couple of things. So I was the individual who found these devices in the manufacturer prior to Ernesto's coming on to VMS. The one that I don't see is the smallest. You only brought the two. If you look at page 3 of 3, agenda item 15, at the very top is the small one. It's much smaller than this white one you have here. It's like a little mushroom cap. In my conversations with the manufacturer, who holds the patent on this device, he told me that the battery life on these units is 3 years. The samples that you have here today, I brought in over a year ago, sometime in 2016. So these units are already a year and a half old. As far as the expense and the placement, yes, nothing is perfect, but before I go on there, I want to ask Ernesto, because Carl said something which surprises me. My understanding was that the Watts devices that were going to be installed were only going to be installed in those locations where there was not a drain.
That is correct, because if
Right.
the code, what the code requires is that you drain the water heater to the outside of the building.
So we are not installing 6,323
No, not
cutoff
on what,
devices.
no. Only if you cannot drain outside of the
Right.
building. If you can drain outside of the building, there's really not an issue.
So I wanted to be clear on that, because Carl seems to think that we're putting these in, and the original Watts devices were $600, and we were buying them for like $300, and I tried to put a stop to that because we were looking for other alternatives, and now we have a device that costs $150.
That's correct.
That doesn't cost $300 in labor to put in.
That is correct. We're
So,
using the cheaper one.
We brought that cost way down, and now we have a proactive program to make sure that wherever we can, we vent to the outside so that we don't have to incur those costs. So we're not going to spend $5 million putting in and out of shut-off valves on the water heaters, just so everybody's clear. My original concept when I found these devices was the following. We got bad valves, very old valves. We're not replacing the valves in a proactive program. We spend $1.5 million a year on water intrusion. What can we do to reduce that expense? If you can reduce that expense 10%, $150,000 a year over 7 years, you're going to save $1 million. What can you do? Well, you can replace all the valves, you can line all the copper pipes, you can spend tens and tens of millions of dollars. When I found these, I went, the manufacturer will sell us a 3-pack, the small ones, the ones you see at the very top, for $8.51. They're less than $2 a piece, or less than $3 a piece. The blue ones in the water pans, I was never even going to recommend that because it has a pan. That's what the pan is for, right? We have no data as to the water intrusion costs due to roof leaks, window leaks, copper pipe pinholes. We don't have the reports on that. It's back there in Stellar. We're not pulling it out. So we're at a loss. But we know we spend $1.5 million a year on this stuff, on the water intrusion. What can we do to mitigate it at some level at the least expense? If you take a packet of 3 of these smallest ones, the mushrooms, and you put them under each sink in a unit, yeah, somebody may move it, somebody may knock it over, battery life runs out. But for $10 a manor, $12 a manor with tax and freight and distribution costs, I mean, for $75,000, how many leaks might you prevent within 3 years? What could your savings be? So that was the original intent. The large ones are more money. Small ones, like I said, are less than $3 a piece. And that's why I brought it forward a couple of years ago. Obviously, it's a budget concern, and knowing the president of the company, as I have gotten to know him through the communications, I'm certain that you can get a warranty from him. He's been making these for a lot of years. He's not going out of business that I know of. You can get a warranty from him. You can probably ask him for a 3 or 4% increase in the number that you purchase at no additional charge for failures that may occur. I mean, anything you manufacture, if you have 3% or less failure rate, you're doing good. Whether it's a car or a toilet, a watch, doesn't matter. You're always going to have some failure rate. But the batteries are supposed to last 3 years. And if you buy 6,300 packages of 3, ask him for an extra 200 packages for free for failures. $75,000 to put them in all the units for just the small packs of 3. Forget the hot water heater. So half the money.
Thank you. Gary?
I just want to, I agree with what Steve is saying, and when we're spending the kind of money that we are on water intrusion each year, this is very minute, and this would maybe even buy us. We wouldn't even necessarily have to replace them in 3 to 4 years, but it might buy us 3 to 4 years of time to get our water intrusion under control.
Okay, Carl?
There's a lot of merit to what Steve said, and if they move them under the sink, well, it's their problem, okay? You will have a bit of water under your sink before this thing will actually alarm, but it's better than nothing. However, one thing Steve said I totally disagree with, and that is the hot water heaters. Now, I do know that my pan does actually drain to the outside. Now, I didn't realize that there was a situation here whereby if the pan drains to the outside, then this device that we talked about, Ernesto and I, before the meeting, was not going to be installed. Now, unfortunately, I have a lot of bad incidents in my life, and my hot water heater did leak. But it didn't leak drip, 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 okay? There's 60 to 100 pounds of pressure in that hot water heater, okay? And when it leaked, I had a tremendous amount of water coming out of that hot water heater. Now, we have a pan in our house, but the pan drain line was plugged by a bunch of spider webs, okay? And without actually snaking out those drain lines every once in a while, you don't know what is accumulated in that line. So what'll happen is at 60 to 100 pounds, you get a lot of water going into that pan, and then it overflows. I would put these things in that hot water heater pan as a minimum, okay? Because that is going to be a major problem, okay? And then maybe maintenance should be done on those drain lines to make sure that the spiders that clogged up the line are no longer clogging the line. Because in my case, it didn't clog it completely, but it backed it up enough so that I had water coming down from my ceiling. And this is a problem. So this hot water heater, okay, is not a drip, drip, drip issue, okay? It is a 60 to 100 pound issue when it starts leaking. And it may only be a pinhole leak, but that pinhole leak at 60 to 100 pounds is a lot of water.
Any other comments? Pat?
Yes. Ernesto, I don't know the facts on this, but you might. As far as water intrusion is concerned, my experience has been over many years in owning many properties that one of the biggest water leak areas is the toilet overflowing. That seems to be the biggest water intrusion that I know of. And I don't think this will do anything as far as water intrusion in the toilets is concerned. And I still say, I think we should vote no on this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to make a comment that not only the toilets, but the showers and the bathtubs also back up.
Dick?
How do you know, well, let's put it this way. With the smoke detectors, they actually go and check them on a, what is it, every 2 years or so? But how do you check these? Are we going to ask the residents to check them? How do you know when the battery gives out? You may have the thing there, and it may not be functional. I understand that, but the point is the resident going to do that? I doubt it. They don't check their own smoke detectors. So that's point one. Point two, I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts as to how you can get around this and still maybe have a program. The first thing is that if you take a small plastic container and you put it in under the area where the pipe may leak, just leave it there. And occasionally, you'll see, the resident will notice at some point that there's some water accumulating in there. You don't need a detector. You'll just see the water. So that's one thing you could recommend to people. The other thing is that if you don't want to incur the expense, I'm sure there are people who will, if you offered this and told them about it, that they would do it themselves. So you have two ways that perhaps you could promote it without incurring the expense. One is put a plastic container underneath, you'll collect the water, you'll see it, and that's no expense really, $1 for a plastic container. And the other is voluntary. Let people know that it's available.
Good point. Dale?
It's just my recommendation. I have seen this a lot of places. This is a proactive approach for us to mitigate, in water intrusion. If you look at the cost ratio compared to what we are paying right now, I don't think anyone would deny that type of devices. 2 or 3 years, we can replace them. You're still going to come out way ahead. But it's a proactive approach, and we need to consider those things.
Thank you. Anyone else have comments? Jack?
I don't think that people would take real advantage of that. I mean, I think this is a waste of time even to even consider this. If these devices are loose. They'll just be put here, and they'll be, next time you know, they're somewhere else. If they're fixed, it might be something you consider, but they're loose, they're not going to be in place necessarily when something leaks. And the chances are they won't be. It's just the kind of a device that it's like a plaything. I just don't, to me, it's silly, and I just wouldn't even consider it.
Okay, anyone else? Carl?
If we decide not to purchase these things for the manors, as I mentioned before with regard to the hot water heater, which can cause a tremendous leak and the drain line being plugged, I think these should be put in the hot water heater things, because nobody looks in that little cubby where the hot water heater is. And maybe if you do have a drip, 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 you don't know about it for whatever. And besides that, for as long as it could be weeks before you notice it, because that telltale drain that comes out the outside of your building, okay, is just going to drip, 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 or what have you. Nobody even notices that either. So at this particular point in time, you won't know you had a leak. You're going to be wasting all this water. This little $2 thing, okay, you put it in the hot water heater thing. Nobody touches it again. And the guy here's the specific tenant, our members, okay, hear it ringing, and they'll say, what's going on with that, okay? And that will say something, okay? Maybe the one in the sink is not going to be moved or what have you, okay? But this one in a hot water heater, this will say something. It's a waste of water and what have you.
Okay, Gary?
I've got a question for Ernesto. Do we have a program at all where we're roto-rooting the pipe from the hot water heater out, or is there nothing going at this time?
No, we don't do that. I mean, we hardly ever experience those problems. I think Carl got lucky and he experienced it, but it's a very, very low occurrence of that.
Okay, we need to close this up.
Real quick.
Steve? Sure.
The blue ones are $6 a piece, not 3. Just so you're 2. As far as the hot water heaters are concerned and the pans, we purchase commercial grade hot water heaters. Is that not correct, Ernesto?
That is correct.
We do
yeah.
not buy residential grade. We buy commercial grade, and we used to buy the A.O. Smiths, which had a 10-year warranty, and now we're buying
We're going to
ones
ream.
that have lifetime.
They have a 10-year warranty.
Okay, because I
And-
know Mark Stahl was saying something about a stainless steel one that had a lifetime, and I said,
No, we're not
well,
doing that.
lifetime was only good as long as the manufacturer stays in business.
That's right. So it's a 10-year, but again, these water heaters outlived their warranties, almost by 100%.
Right, so in my experience, being on this committee and being involved with maintenance and Mark and Ernesto, I don't believe, and of course we have no data, but I don't believe that we have a tremendous number of hot water heater failures within the units. That's just I've never heard of one. Doesn't mean they don't happen, but I don't believe out of the 6,323 water heaters that are commercial grade that we replace every 10 years. Yeah, we're 3 years behind because of the permits, but we don't have a raging problem with hot water heaters. I believe we do have a problem with the valves under the sinks. As far as the toilets overflowing, well, if you have one of the small mushrooms next to the toilet and the toilet overflows, what's going to happen? The thing's going to start whistling. If the bathtub overflows and it gets on the floor in the bathtub, it'll start whistling. So again, my original thought and concept was get the mushrooms, put them next to the toilet and underneath the basins, spend $75,000 if you have to, and see if you can't reduce, what's the average cost of a water intrusion in a bathroom? $4,000? $5,000 with the dry down service, the plumbers, the painters? I mean, geez, you can't put a $2 piece of equipment to possibly not incur a $4,000 or $5,000 thing? That's All I have to say.
Good. All right, Jenny, you're going to be next, then Dick.
I just wanted to comment that I agree with Steve. I know we haven't even taken into consideration how many hot water heaters are outside of the unit. I have one outside. I know there's others. And I don't think the hot water heater is the issue. I believe that the valves are the issue.
Dick?
Can the sound be heard by neighbors? Because I'm out of my place maybe 50% of the time. And if a leak occurs, you have to have somebody hear it. Can a thing
No.
be heard? Yeah.
No.
No, I can hardly hear when it was on
Oh.
here.
And one
My
other
hearing's not the
issue,
best,
if
I
I may.
guess.
Do any of these detectors have a different sound? Because many residents have animals, and this is very disturbing to them. So this thing goes off and you're not home for a day. It could cause a lot of issue. So I wondered, do they ever have any other signal than this high pitch?
Yeah, I'm not aware that they do.
You can buy all kinds of units up to $50 a piece.
Right.
Steve, we
They have
know you're
wall
for
warts,
it.
they plug into electric.
Okay, we need to close this discussion. There's no recommendation on this from staff. So what do you want to do with it? You want to vote on it? You want to wait and see? You want to take up Dick's suggestion, make it voluntary? What do you want to do, if anything? If there's no motion, I'm just going to let it die.
All right.
Pat?
I move that we take up Dick's recommendation to have this a voluntary thing and advise our citizens that it is available. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I have a question on Pat's motion.
Okay, hold on.
Does that mean that we would pay for it if it was voluntary? Is that what we're saying here?
The residents will pay.
The
Oh, the
resident
resident.
The res-
Oh,
the
okay,
resident
so,
would.
all we're basically doing is providing advertising to them at this particular point in time. I mean,
Or
that's
you
correct.
could
So,
go in the middle and pay half and let resident. That'd be
well,
awful.
well, that was the thing right now. Because
yeah.
right now, this motion, I mean, this particular resolution is for us to provide it, okay? And by stating that, all we're saying is we're not going to take this up at all.
We can
We're just
change
gonna
that.
advertise it.
We can do what we want to on this.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, that the intent was to let the residents know that this device is available and that they may purchase it, and that's basically it.
The price listed here, Ernesto, would that be the price that the resident could get, or is it that our price?
It'll probably be slightly higher because they're giving us price in bulk. So,
Okay, yes.
Perhaps a way of testing the, whether or not the residents would be into this and think it's something that's valuable, is perhaps the people that have signed up for the handyman service could be informed of this, and then the resident would pay for the devices, and that way word of mouth would spread, and we would find out if there really is a great desire for people to have it, and if they want to have it, it's very simple for the handyman service to just bring it to them.
Okay.
okay. And if I just made that would change the nature of what Pat suggested,
Yes.
because in that case, we will have to purchase them and stock them.
Okay. Okay, Pat had a motion. Was there a second on that? That motion dies for lack of second. Anybody else? Okay, since there's no motion on this, I'm going to, the recommendation is to receive and file. Just file the information and it's there to bring up at any time in the future. Gary?
I just want to make a comment that I'm not bringing anything forward mainly because the sound I don't think is there. And it's not because I don't think we couldn't use them or make use of them or lower our water intrusion costs. But I don't know. I'm just kind of at a loss with it.
Okay, well, we'll just put a file for future information. I would like to thank staff for doing all the work and getting us the figures on this, and for Steve for his input. Okay, the next item is energy walkway lighting audit, gate 5 and 6. Ernesto?
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, as you know, the board retained the services of a lighting consultant, that's U.S. Energy, and they are available. The idea was to have them available on an on-call basis to perform any lighting analysis or make any recommendations to the mutual relative to any lighting issues as they would come up. The board directed us to have the consultant conduct an audit of the walkway areas at gate 5 and 6. We have, as you know, the majority of the fixtures, not a majority, all of the fixtures are really pagoda-style walkway lighting, to which you replaced the bulbs some time ago from the regular bulbs that were in there to LEDs. However, this lighting, of course, does not provide the safety required for walkway lighting. As you know, this lighting was not intended to light the entire walkway. It was intended to be accent lighting, if you would, or directional lighting. So the mutual, as well as a third mutual, both have programs to enhance lighting and to address lighting needs as they're brought up to staff. So the consultant, U.S. Energy, completed an audit of the area at 5 and 6, gates 5 and 6, and they've provided that report to us, which is included in here. They've provided 3 options for you to consider, varying in price and also varying in energy cost to the mutual. One of those options includes the bowler-style lighting that was recently considered and approved by Third, which is being installed everywhere at gates 5, 6, and 7, and 8. There will be installing a total of 590 fixtures, of which I think they already installed over 300 of them. So what I would recommend, again, I can go over U.S. Energy's report, but essentially it's a very simple report. They provide you a map which identifies the location of all the pagoda lighting fixtures that you have out there. Some of them, actually the majority of them are about an 8.5 watt LED lamps. There's a couple only that are the old 7 watt compact fluorescent. But the majority are the LED, the pagoda type. So they conducted that survey, and they've arrived at the quantities that are needed out there. And they are providing on page 5 of 16 the type of fixture that you could consider installing. 2 of them are the focus lighting at 2574, and the third one is the Joshua Light, which is what was recently installed by Third. The annual operating cost for that is about $4,000. So that's a deficit of about $1,400 to operate. But again, bear in mind that the bulb will provide a lot more lumens. They're considering installing a 14-watt bulb relative to the 8.5-watt bulb that you currently have out there. So staff's recommendation on this report would be for you to probably go out there and take a look at the one that Third is installing and see what the characteristics of that fixture are, the illumination that it's providing, how far it throws the light, and what the difference is with the pagoda styles that you have. before you make a decision on anything. That's really the best. This is you can consider it as a pilot program, which Third has already spent the time to install. So I would look at that and then let staff know if that fixture is acceptable to you, and then give us direction to put this out to bid. We did receive a cost to install these fixtures at about $95,000. This is just an estimated cost. We would, if we install them with US Energy, but what we would do, if you give us direction to consider any specific fixture, we will put it out to bid and get competitive costs for the installation and bring those back to you with our recommendation to award a contract. So that's all the information that's provided here. It's really informational in nature. And we're looking to hopefully for you to go out, take a look at what Third installed, see if that's a fixture that you like, and then let us know. And if that's the case, we'll take that and put it out to bid and bring back a recommendation to you.
Is there a location?
Do we know where they're installed in Third? Have we-
They're installed everywhere.
Are they?
Yeah, and gates 5 and 6, you'll see them. I can provide you specific address of those locations. Let me see if I have there. Let's see, it's very near gate 6, all the way from 2221 through 2230. So the building's 2221 and 2230, so you can take a walk around that area. There's about 280 of them already that have been installed. So if you want to have a look at those and let us know if you think that that's an acceptable illumination level. Again, it takes it from 8.5 watts to 14 watts.
So
So
we have
you're going
to-
to see a significant difference.
Any concern with people sleeping with those lights on?
We haven't heard anything yet, but I wouldn't rule it out, that we may have some calls, it's too bright, but we haven't heard anything at this
Okay,
point.
no. Questions? Any comments, questions? Yes, Carl?
These are meant to replace the actual walkway lights? Is that the intent?
That is correct.
But
to
that's not
replace-
throughout the village, right? Throughout United, is that correct? 'Cause
No,
I don't
the-
see all of United represented on this map. do
No,
I?
we're looking at gates 5 and 6, that was the direction that was given. Yeah,
Okay,
just
this
5
is
and
why
6.
I'm confused right now. Okay, I get confused very easily, so maybe. Okay, now I'm hearing, okay, all right, that's where we're going. Thanks.
Did you say it's going to replace the electric lights we have now?
It will replace the pagoda-style fixture, yes.
Okay.
Not all of them, it will replace them wherever they're located, wherever we want to replace it with a boiler.
Questions? Yeah, Anita?
As some of you remember, we did this extensively a few years ago. Anthony Libatori headed up that committee, and we changed the height of the ballards, and we also changed the bulbs to LED. Now, the new ones that Third are putting in do have I'm not sure if I have the right terminology, a greater throw of the light.
You got it.
So they cover a wider area. However, I think with all of the other things that we have in our budget, that going back and redoing those at this time is not really cost-effective. And we still have money that we put in our budget every year to add new ones where we find dark areas or where people think that there's not enough light at a juncture of walkways or sidewalks or something like that. But to go out and wholesale do this all over again, I don't think is fiscally responsible right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I didn't think we had that big of a problem with lights. I know there are some people are wandering around at night for different reasons, and they really can't see that well, but to do this wholesale, it might be too much. I don't know.
May I
But I
talk
will
on this?
definitely go over in Third and look at them. I'm curious.
May I talk, please?
Yeah, Pat.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what Juanita has just said, because several years ago, we did an investigation on this, and we found that the area lights were more practical for us. And we did try out a few of the bollards, and as I recall, they were very expensive, like $100 a piece or something like that. Could you give us a comment, Ernesto, on the difference in cost between area lights putting out similar amount of light compared to the bollards?
Of course, the cost that was provided by U.S. Energy, and this is again an estimate, a ballpark cost, it's $95,000, about $96,000. That could go down considerably.
That's just
So,
for one
no, that's to replace 482 ballers.
Oh.
Right.
$197.
Right.
A lot
Dick?
of money.
You have a comment?
Yeah, Ernesto, I need to ask you a question so I understand this. Right now, where I live, there's a certain distance between the bollards, okay? So the light is thrown out so far. How much additional throw are we going to get? Because really, the issue is you may get additional throw, but if you don't cover the entire distance between the two, we still have the problem where people are going to say we don't have enough lighting. So it sounds to me like if you don't get complete light coverage between the two bollards, you basically have only put a Band-Aid on the problem, if you see what I mean. You haven't solved it. You just tried to do something better than we have. I think that at some point when we address all the repairs and all those things, at some point the Energy Task Force may also be asked to address this issue. What would they recommend in terms of completing the lighting so it completes the entire walkway as opposed to just, an area?
I think, Dick, that would depend on the person walking. I don't need a lot of light. I go from one light to the next, and some would want the whole thing
Yeah.
lighted. Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Steve, wait.
just briefly, I was just going to mention that the throw, Dick, you requested to know, yeah. It's about 8, you're going to get about 6 feet throw on each side of the fixture. So you're going to get closer than what you have right now. So right now, the light ends.
We got about 30 feet.
Oh, yeah, it's like, as I mentioned before, this is not meant to
Resolve all the
resolve
issues.
the lighting issues. Again, these were not meant to be, they're not meant to be safety lighting as you would have on the street light, in a city. These are really were originally installed to be accent lighting, to make it pretty at night and to provide some sort of a directional light for the residents.
On the map, there is a schedule of the fixtures. How many of those fixtures are there for each fixture type in all of United? That's not presented here. Or- No, that's the type of light. That's a description. There's not a count. How many A fixtures, how many B fixtures, how many J fixtures, how many B fixtures? How many light bulbs did we replace?
I believe
Juanita?
that there are
3,100 or something throughout United?
there's 243 of the pagoda, the medium base LEDs.
No.
That's on page
That's on
6.
5 and 6. On this map is represented every single fixture in United. How many are there?
For the entire United?
For United.
No, this is not for United.
For Uni-
This is for 5 and 6 only. Right, that's what's.
My question, okay,
How many are in total?
you spend $95,000 to replace 482 fixtures. And everybody on this side of El Toro is going to say, where's my fixture? How many more are you going to have to put in? How many fixtures are there? How many light bulbs did we replace, Juanita? 3,300? I don't remember. It was thousands. 200 times 3,000, do the math. Number one, what are you solving? Not much.
Yeah.
Number two, if you watched yesterday's third board meeting, I don't know, how many people did? Yori, whatever his name was, got up and said, they just put in all these new LED lights in my neighborhood, and they're too bright. They shine in my window.
Yeah.
No matter, we've talked about this in lighting all the time. You've got, these people say we don't have enough light. You have these people say I don't want any more. And you're talking about 200 times 3,000 is $600,000.
You're gonna get a lot of complaints. Yeah. Okay, Gary, you had your hand up.
I think we need to table this. I think we have a lot of problems. I'm with Juanita. We have a lot of other things that we need to expend the dollars on rather than lighting.
And I'll
This is
second
not-
that,
This
Gary.
is not an action item, it's informational item. Carl?
I don't believe that we, as part of the advertising for this community, we specifically said that everything is lit, okay, so that it's like, Disneyland, okay? If people want to walk at night, and I do, I grab my flashlight, okay, which provides me with sufficient light to make sure that I don't trip and fall. So at this particular point in time, those pagoda lights that I have in my neighborhood and around my manor or what have you, okay, are just there for landscaping and picturesqueness or what have you. They're not supposed to be. They're directional.
Direction.
So at this particular point in time, the only issue that we're going to come up with is the fact that once Third finishes their work, okay, there's going to be a lot of complaints. Well, if Third did it, why didn't they do it in United? But at this particular point in time, if we do it in 5 and 6, then we're going to have to do it for the rest of United because everybody's going to say, why not me? I believe that this thing needs to get tabled just like everybody. I agree with Juanita and everybody else.
Okay, what the direction from staff, recommendation from staff was to go to Third and look and see what they have, and then the next board meeting in 2 months, if you want to bring this up, you can bring it up at that time. But right now, there's no action to be taken.
Right.
Juanita?
Just for informational, Third did this because they did not have the kind of lighting that we did. We started this project a number of years ago. We raised the height of the bollards. We put in the LEDs. They didn't have that, so they started this project. And what they have come up with is a little bit different than what we have. But they were replacing really old, non-functional, old-fashioned ones. And we would be basically replacing fairly new ones.
I'm the advisor on Third MNC. I said, do what we did. No,
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is really quick. I live there, and we're really happy with the way the lights look at night. I haven't heard one complaint about the lighting at night. And most of our residents, including me, I mean, we're in bed pretty early. So I don't think it's a really big problem. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one quick comment. If the lights are so bright over in Third, let them light up us.
Okay, that's the end of our reports. Future agenda is listed, repair cost for staff versus using an outside vendor. That should be interesting. And the copper pipe line leak report for December will be concluding business. Any comments, Dale? No. Jack? No. Carl?
Yeah. I have something to ask Ernesto. With the work that we're specifically needing to do in the next year or so, okay, and we had these budget meetings with Brad and what have you, and said that we're going to need to use contractors to get the work done because we just don't have enough staff to get it done, and certain things are specialty items or what have you. There's the contract with the union that's going to be coming up here shortly, okay? We're going to try to allow for more contract work in this community. Is that correct?
That is correct. I don't want to speak for the CEO. He'll be negotiating that with the union, but in the conversations I've had with him, one of the specific requests that we're going to have of the union is to provide more flexibility for us to allow us to go to outside vendors when needed. to either to amend our work or to make it more efficient and cost-effective for the mutuals.
Yeah, because I say this because of the fact that all the work in the M&C, okay, a large part of it, okay, is going to possibly be done with contractors, okay, for the reserve funding stuff. And as a result of that, in order to spend the money that everybody's complaining we have too much of right now and get the work done that we really need to get done, okay, then the contract issue is going to be a major issue for us.
Okay, Gary, anything?
I have nothing. I just want to say I think it was a good meeting, and I want to say I'm going to miss you, Don.
Thank you. Pat?
Yes, I have a little bit to say for a change. First of all, everybody doesn't believe that we're not spending it. We just believe it's not being spent fast enough, which is totally different. Anyway, I would just like to thank everybody. I've really had it's been my privilege to be on this committee, and I'd be sorry because I will be leaving with Don. Don and I are both termed out, and I'd like to thank Juanita and Ernesto especially for all the hard work that he does for this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pat. Jane?
I kind of wanted to say the same. You know, it's been great to see Pat and Don, and I won't cry, but I will miss you.
Thank you. This is the next meeting, October 24th. Okay, Ernesto, thank you for this year. You're always so well prepared and so knowledgeable. And of course, Lori, we couldn't do without you. Thank you for all your help. And besides that, you're in top of third, and it's a huge task, and I appreciate your help. With that, we are adjourned.